Dear Black women, this podcast is a love letter to you all. This podcast is a space where we give you your flowers for making the world a better place for us all. This podcast is a space where you can take off your crown and the superhero cape and showcase your vulnerability. This is your time to get refreshed and poured into. Black women, you are loved. Black women, you are valuable. Black women, you are beautiful. Not just for all you do, but for who you are. Welcome to the Black Women Save the World podcast. I'm your host, Deidre Montague. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 4th episode of the Black Women Save the World podcast. We're super excited today for our special guest, Celia Blue, President and CEO of the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition. She leads the organization to realize its vision and mission for overseeing the day-to-day operations while strongly advocating for the voices of women of color to be heard to address the inequities that are present in every aspect of their lives. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thanks for tuning in. Enjoy! So thank you so much, Miss Blue, again for your time. I would love to start off by diving into your childhood. What were you like as a child? Were you shy? Were you extroverted? Were you close to your parents?
Yeah, I was close to my parents, very family oriented. I wasn't shy. I was probably a little bit rambunctious, I would say. An extrovert, so just loved to have friends, and my family is very involved in the community. I grew up, part of my childhood was in Jamaica. My parents are from Jamaica. I'm from Jamaica.
Hmm.
So my early sense of being a child and growing up was very much very community, deep sense of community and that deep sense of a village. It didn't matter what nationality or ethnicity you are, you're known as a Jamaican. So it was just like, it was a wonderful way of growing up. And definitely my parents were very community oriented. So everyone kind of knew us, so that had its positive things and and negative things in the sense that I couldn't get away with much.
Yeah.
Mr. So and so down the street would say, "I'm gonna tell your parents," Those things were real, so so but really deep sense of community and having really being involved in the community was really early, very fun memories for me growing up.
It's amazing. It sounds so wonderful. It sounds like such a joyous childhood for sure. Is there a particular or a favorite story from childhood that you could share with us? A favorite of yours?
Yes, I was thinking about this a little bit. And so, first of all, I have to say some of my favorite memories was with my mom, who we lost years ago. I learned how to crochet. I learned how to do needlepoint stitching, which I don't know if we do this anymore. Gardening. We had gardens and we had a lot of vegetation on our land. So I learned early about gardening and the benefits of growing your own food. So those are some of my fond memories. I was thinking about the story that came to mind. I got bit by a dog when I was younger. There's a good part of the story. So I was at one of my neighbor's house and they had a dog, and for some reason, the dog on that day just didn't recognize me. And I don't know if I stepped on his foot or something, but all of a sudden he came after me and I started running. And so I'm running around the house. I don't know if you saw that movie with Chevy Chase where he goes around the rotary like a million times and he can't
Yeah.
get out of the rotary. That was me running around the house with the dog chasing me and my neighbors trying to catch up with us. And then I ended up stumbling and falling and I got bit by the dog. And I still have a scar today. But what I learned from that experience is that my parents said to me, Celia, you cannot run because when you run, the dog senses your fear and basically gives the dog permission to come after you. And they said, "You have to stand still, and even if you act like you're gonna pick up a rock to hit the dog to let him know that you're not scared of them, and that will work." And I'm thinking to myself, "Is that possible?" Went to another neighbor's house weeks later, and the same thing happened. The dog was barking at me, and I think my knees were shaking, but I stood still and act like I was gonna pick up a rock, and the dog just looked at me and backed down. And so the story around that is, first of all, listening to your parents, right? The advice they give you. Second is being disciplined because it took a lot as a young girl to stand there and face this dog that's barking at me, knowing that I just got bit like months ago, right? And so I thought about that and I was like, I'll share that story because it popped in my head because clearly it was an experience and I learned a lot from it and I grew from it.
Amazing that you were able to take such a scary situation and flip it into learning how to really stand up to fear in a sense. So that is really amazing that you were able to share that. I'm sure that is going to resonate with so many people. It's already resonating with me as someone who is not very into dogs or anything. So definitely something cool. And thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
I would love to shift gears into your journey into community organizing, specifically becoming the president and CEO of Massachusetts Women of Color Collision.
Thank you. Go
Yes.
ahead.
Did you have an aha moment when you knew you were called to lead this
Yeah.
organization and do this work?
Yeah, I did. And it actually happened before I began leading the work. I grew up in a religious family and I do have a relationship with God. One of my things is really having that higher power in your life, I think is really important. And I had a vision years before that about really creating an organization for women of color. Some of that was shaped by my own experiences, which were oftentimes I was the only sort of leader of color in a lot of different structures for both in the private sector and also the public sector. And it was a lonely experience. And so as I also continued on my journey to go into executive level roles, it was even more clear to me that we needed to create an organization for us, really by us, and to be part of the solution because the inequities continued. You didn't see more of us at the table, and certainly you, like, when you get there, I certainly work to make sure there's someone that looks like me that's in some of these seats that we have to fill. When you're a leader, you can help with shaping that, but the needs were so great, and so that was placed on my heart years ago, and I kinda ran away from it, to be honest, because I was doing a lot at the time. I was in grad school, I had a child, I was in wasn't really ready for that, until years later when I started vocalizing it actually with some of my mentors, that this has been placed on my heart, and it's really becoming more and more a deeper sense that is something I have to do, and until I really started talking about it, and one of my dear friends who has known me now, I guess almost 40 years, invited me to a breakfast here in Worcester that Brenda Jenkins was hosting, who was also organizing local women of color. And it began to take seed from there. And when we began to do our soft launches across the Commonwealth, basically it was a proof of concept. Those sessions continued to be aha moments for me in the sense that there were affirmation that this organization is needed.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
Can you talk about overall what your journey was like getting into community advocacy? Were any of your previous jobs like a bridge into where you are today and helped you to make that decision toward, I'm going to go and do this thing?
Mhm. Yeah. The thing for me is it was the desire that was placed on my heart, that real sense of responsibility and desire and this burning passion to do this. That was the driver for me. It was really beyond me. So I think that's really important to know, right? The second piece is that I was deliberate about being involved in our communities. So for many years, I was a non-traditional student. I went back to school when I was older in life and then began working. I began working right away out of high school. So I didn't have a lot of time to give back to the community. And when I was in a position to do that, I was deliberate about, okay, where do I want to spend my time? And so my time was spent in my church and BIPOC-led nonprofit organizations, and also an organization focused on girls. So I was really deliberate. And then on the professional sense, I was also joining organizations that were focused on the BIPOC community. So it's really deliberate about, okay, I have this much time. I want to truly want to give back. Where do I want to focus that time? And that's when I really started to learn about BIPOC groups organizing and what that really looks like when you're in power on a board to help move some of the work and to really make sure some of the funds are shifting and advocating. I would go with the present chair of the board or the CEO of the different banks to advocate for the organization. So I opened up my eyes to that and began my experience. So I was doing that on parallel track as well as now I was in senior and went into executive level roles. And I think that leadership experience on the professional side really helped me on the nonprofit side. So I started that community work a little bit later when I was a little more seasoned. And then in terms of focusing on girls, and a lot of the girls were girls of color, and really seeing that work that needs to happen there. That also, and then political activism, that to me, that was really an eye-opening journey for me, learning how to organize from a political activism and grassroots perspective. I really got to see a lot of different things and then really building some skills and experiences and the relationships that are so important that you need to build along the way. So I
Yeah.
hope I answered your question
Yes,
there.
absolutely. I just think that's beautiful that you were able to find your specific journey through volunteering and also it gave you, it seems like, the time to really hone in on what you were looking for,
Yeah,
which is
it
really,
did.
really good.
It did. And then women as a whole too, in my professional journey was really focused on how we make sure that we lift up women in the different environments that I was in, and particularly women of color.
Thank you for that. If you could describe your experience of being the CEO and president of this collision, what would it be?
That's a tough question because I feel like I'm still in that journey. I would say it's really hard work, but it is so worth it. We are worth it. And that I am really humbled, blessed, grateful, and feel very privileged to be leading this organization, particularly in these times.
Mm. Yeah. And I'm sure the community is so grateful to have you and your team really doing this work. Can you talk a little bit about how you service the community in this leadership position for those who may not be familiar with the coalition or may not be familiar with your work?
Sure, sure. I'm happy to do that. So we are a statewide nonprofit organization, nonpartisan organization. We're based in Worcester, Massachusetts, but we are statewide. I think it's important for people to know. We are focused really in addressing racial inequities that are created by structural, institutional, internalized, and personal racism. And we're focused on some broad areas that we call our platform areas. One is political and civic leadership, and I'll get into a little bit about the work that we're doing, economic power and sustainability, health and wellness, criminal justice, education justice, and we also have a leadership track. Right now, just because of capacity challenges, we're focused on our top three platforms. However, if one of our partners approaches us on the other two that we're not active on, we absolutely will partner and do some kind of event. But we're primarily focused on political and civic leadership, health and wellness, and economic power and sustainability in our leadership track. So the work that we're doing is, I like to say it's in a few ways. One, we're doing training, informational sessions, and advocacy work because we believe that We need to change policies and legislations along with doing the work in order to have transformative change. And we're also a broad convening and network for women of color across the Commonwealth. Specifically in the political and civic leadership, our goals are around advocating and empowering women of color to be in more elected positions, appointed positions, because those are also important, and also to be on boards and commissions, because we know we are not sitting on those larger boards that are making decisions for us in our communities. In addition to that, we have our main objective is to make sure that we are voting. Voter turnout is important, civic engagement is important, and not just to when we vote, but beyond when we vote. And how do we make sure that you feel like you have the tools, the resources to be able to, for example, hold your public official accountable, which as a resident in any state, you can do that. And then how do we create a support system, particularly for women of color who are in these positions? Because there are a lot of times you are the only one. And I, for one, know what that's like to be in those seats and the support that you need. We want to be that broader community of support. So that's the work that we're doing. We have some legislation. We've been at the table for the broader access to voting. We were one of the coalition organizations involved in that. Previously, Governor Baker signed that into law. So we have some wins with some of the work we're doing right now on the economic power and sustainability platform. We're about how do we improve the lives of our women of color and our communities of color in terms of eliminating the wealth gap, for example. Now, that's a broad goal, but we got to work on it, right? Because we still have these gaps. So we do financial literacy programs. We are doing programming around how do you build assets towards then gaining wealth, home ownership. We have a small business initiative that we want to be able to give you some consultant services to help you with your business. And also we have partnering organization that we're partnering around with certification, because in order to really get at some of these contracts and larger corporations or city and state governments, certification is usually what is needed for that. Wage inequities continues to be a large issue, especially for women of color. We're what, 64 cents and for I think blacks versus our white counterpart, and I think 57 cents for 57 on the dollar for Latino women. That's still a gap. So not only are we in our leadership academy, we're sharing strategies and resources how to make sure that you are doing your market analysis and you're advocating for the kind of pay that you need, but we're also on a steering committee advocating for the change in the laws around that. There's a wage transparency law right now that we've testified on, we're working on with the former Lieutenant Governor Evelyn Murphy, Megan Driscoll, and the Boston Foundation are some of the leaders on that. We're part of that steering committee. We are very close. That bill would be probably one of 9 or 10 states that have this bill. And why it's important is because it will, if you have over 25 employees, I believe that's the number, you have to share the salary ranges of the position. Believe it or not, not many organizations do that. You are also entitled to know the history of the salary when you're getting promoted in an organization. And as an employee, you can ask about the salary range for your roles. And then more importantly, we'll start collecting data, because right now, even though organizations give that data to the federal government, we're not collecting that here in Massachusetts. So we can't measure what we don't know. So we need to be able to say, how are we really doing? And what are some of those strategies from the organizations that are doing this well, and how we can help others to really get on board with making sure that we're getting paid equitable pay for the work that we're doing. So that's just an example of some of what are we doing, and that will help the broader Commonwealth as a whole and everybody, really. right? But it will have an impact, particularly for women of color, because where we are in terms of inequities in salaries right now and wage and compensation. And then the other piece around health and wellness, we're focused on maternal health. We look at health really holistically, right? From a social plus even a financial component. And maternal, there are a couple of areas we're focused right now. We have a lot that we objectives, but we fine-tuned it down to a couple, which is mental health. As we know, mental health has been a major challenge for us and then got exacerbated by COVID. There's just a lot and there's not enough access. There's not, so we're focused on that as well as maternal health. We know that Black and Brown women are dying when they give birth to their child, particularly Black women are at the highest numbers. And so that is an area as well that we're focused on. And the last piece I'll share with you is on our leadership academy. It's very important. We don't have enough of us sitting in senior and executive level roles. What are we doing about that? We have a leadership academy, a 12-week program for women. And when you sign up to become involved in that program, you're also agreeing to mentor a high school girl of color. And so we have a 2-week leadership academy for high school girls of color that we offer in winter break and spring break. And then we have 1 year of mentorship for these girls. And so they get to see this based on the STEAM framework, science, technology, engineer, arts, and math. There's also a holistic component to that and a career exploration exponent because we want these young girls to see women that look like them that are in all these different really successful positions. And so, what are we doing in terms of addressing the need? We're making sure that we have a pipeline of the next generation of leaders. And then our boards and commission work, we also have a training that we offer. We partnered with the Center for Women in Politics and Public Policy at UMass Graduate School, McCormick Graduate School. And we offer training so that we're not just encouraging you to sit at these seats, we're trying to make sure you have the tools, the resources, and the support system to be sitting at these seats to help with making the decisions for us in our communities.
That is amazing just to hear all the work that you're doing, especially the Leadership Academy. It just sounds so powerful that not only are you training women of color to enter into these leadership positions and to create systemic change, but you're also training the next generation. That is super powerful with the high school girl. And I'm
Thank
sure
you.
that is life-changing for them, for
We've
sure.
gotten some really fantastic feedback, and it's
Wow.
really affirming and just, again, just so blessed to be doing
Wow.
this work. And we just got some funding. We got a call from Senator Warren last week, and her and Senator Markey pushed for us to get an additional earmark. First, our Congressman McGovern got us an earmark to launch the academy, which was incredibly important. We would not have been able to do that without his help. And now we just got an expansion of that funding to expand the program into Boston and Springfield next year for high school girls of color. So we're
Wow.
super excited.
Congratulations. I
Thank
mean,
you.
that is amazing work. You are clearly accomplishing so much at the organization. Is there a specific accomplishment that you're most proud of at this point? There's
Yeah,
so
that's a
many, it
tough
sounds like, to
question.
choose from.
It is a tough question. Personally, my daughter is, I would say, my number one personal is having her and helping her and watching her grow and being a mom is the best thing ever. And then also going back to school, as I shared earlier, I wasn't a traditional student. I didn't go right to college from high school, but I did have that desire to continue to be, educated. And so I went back to school later in life. I got my associates and my bachelor's and my master's, and I'm now pursuing my PhD, as that was also on my list of things that I wanted to accomplish in the right time. So that I think is from a personal level and from a professional level, certainly leading this organization is a great, as I said, I'm just feel very blessed. Being the registrar of the Commonwealth, being the first African American to run the over 150-year agency in the Commonwealth was really special moment. And then in Rhode Island, when COVID hit, being one of the first agencies to provide SNAP benefit for residents that rely on government services, and overseeing by then Vice President Biden's visit to Rhode Island, who's now
Wow.
president. There's some special moments.
That's pretty exciting. That is amazing. Such accomplishments for sure. You are a trailblazer as one of the founders and leaders of this mighty coalition that's in mass right now for women of color. I'm sure there were some challenges that you had to overcome before this achievement. What were some of those challenges and how were you able to overcome them in order to achieve what you have today?
Yeah. So I think one of the main things is being focused and true to what was placed on your heart. And because I think different people come to the table with different agendas, and you have to be able to stand firm on what it is that the vision that you had. That doesn't mean you don't have room to get ideas. And I think you're better off with more ideas and how you shape things. But what I've learned is that you have to stay true. Stay true to who you are, stay true to what it is that was placed on your heart. So that helps drive you in making those decisions that are sometimes hard. And also being flexible and being able to compromise when it's appropriate, but having that compass on the forefront to help guide you in making those decisions or to advocate for why this is the way to go, I think is really important. Initially, when we started off, I think I wanted to focus on 3 priority areas. Some of our founding members wanted 10. And so I feel good that although I still think it's a lot, right? But we compromised and came up with 5 areas. So that's an example of sometimes you have to have more difficult conversations, but how do you make sure that you are respectful and you listen and you figure out how to compromise to, at the end of the day, where is it that you're trying to get to let that be your guidance? Certainly, funding is a challenge, and we are making our way, which I'm so blessed, and we are also blessed for. Like I just gave examples of our congressional delegation stepping up for a little organization like Maywalk right now, which is going to be huge one day, by the way. And we're going to
Yes,
be global. That's the vision, to be global one day. I just read a report, and I can feel this, right? I read a report last week. In the philanthropic world, about $500 billion, approximately $500 billion were given out in 2022. Only 4% of that money went to BIPOC-led organizations.
mm,
Think about that now. And then less than 1% went to Black-led organizations. Think about that. So that struggle is real. And so we have to think about certainly making sure that we're advocating and staying true to what the mission and what we're trying to do. Just trying to be more creative and getting out there so that people learn about us and our work and advocate for, certainly in our philanthropic spaces, for there to be change around how funds are given out to organizations awarded, because certainly we're doing the work. So those are just some of the ongoing challenges that we're absolutely working on.
absolutely. Just to hear those numbers are pretty jarring for sure. Very, very powerful awareness to know about that. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing how you were able to overcome those challenges as well by having those difficult conversations at times and compromising with your fellow leaders. So thank you for sharing that. I'd like to shift over and dig a little bit deeper into your personal side, if that's okay.
Sure.
You are a busy woman. You're juggling many hats, mother, student, president, and CEO. How are you navigating all of this? What does your self-care routine look like? You said that you're a woman of faith. Is it prayer? Is it meditation? What does self-care look like for you?
Yeah, I can tell you that it's a constant work in progress, and I know that. So I'm constantly checking myself because I do work a lot, and then I also volunteer and other things. So I'm very much mindful of making time, as I shared earlier, that I've got a religious background and that spirituality is important to me. So I do a meditation, a daily meditation. I can tell you that I probably do it about 90% of the time. There are a few times that I do miss it, But what I've done is I get reminded throughout the day. So I try to do it first thing in the morning. If that doesn't happen, I have reminders that are set throughout the day that let me pause. And it's only like a 2-minute meditation on a scripture in the Bible. And it's a thought process in terms of understanding that scripture and then a prayer. So it's not long, but taking that time is very important to me. So I put in those strategies to help me along the way. Prayer is important. That's something that has helped me through my journey through life, really. I love the ocean, so we always try to get to the beach, especially in the summertime here in Massachusetts, and I have family. I don't get back to Jamaica as often as I should. That's something that's I need to work on. But I have family in Florida and we do visit there quite a bit. So my space is being on the ocean with my family. It's a big deal for us. We pack up, we have our coolers, and we spend an entire day on the beach, and snacks and lunch and all of that. And that's my sort of downtime and sometimes to reflect. And then I try to get my exercise in. My goal is 2 to 3 times a week. I have been pretty good with that over the last year, and then I try to make sure I get my massages in as well and get to the spa. That helps me to take care of me and to give myself the time that I need. I like quiet time, and I try to make sure I get that quiet time in throughout the week. And I
There.
golf too with my husband, so
Oh,
I try to make
okay.
sure I get that. That has a must. That's
Love that.
and we both love sports, so I try to make sure that, if the football is one of our favorite things to watch, and so, try to spend time with him as much as I can, and he'll tell you that I don't spend enough time, but I try to get that in.
No, that sounds amazing that there's like a balance between,
I
like,
try, I
yeah,
like
there's,
that's what I say, it's a work in progress, right? And
yeah,
so but I know that I tend and just with the work ethic of just wanting to get things done, I have to work on it. It is a work in progress.
yeah. It sounds like you're really working to practice that intentionality,
Yes.
you know, no matter
Thank
what.
you.
Even if like you miss a day or you miss a time, the constant reminders.
Exactly.
And so that is
Exactly.
super powerful. Thank you
Thank you.
for sharing that. Being that this is a show about Black women saving the world, I would love to ask, could you name or share like three of your top Black women who have worked to save your life or have worked to empower you or encourage you in any way?
Yeah, that's tough to say 3. I feel like I have a lot. I feel very blessed. But I would say Lucia Vega Gomez is someone that just was a strong mentor. May she rest in peace. We lost her last year. Certainly her and Mary Fernandez. I met them when I was in the public sector. Were just amazing ladies. Shirley DeLibero is someone else, just she's known as the queen of transportation across this country. She took time out to mentor a young lady coming up, and Charlotte Ritchie, who made history, first Black woman running for mayor in Boston, who's also chair of our advisory board, has been phenomenal. And I can't leave out my girl, Brenda Jenkins, who's been an amazing partner in this work. So I feel very blessed to have had these ladies around me.
Yeah.
And most of them are still here, which is just a blessing.
Yes, absolutely. It is so great to hear you have a tribe that pours into you as well and a wealth of women that are by your side. That's really great to hear. How do you think that as a Black woman, you are saving the world within the community advocacy space today?
Hmm. Well, I would say it goes back to part of the conversation we just had, right? The work that we are doing, I feel is incredibly important. So we are addressing the inequities through an intersectionality lens, which is race and gender. I think Shirley Chisholm used the term, it's double whammy. And I used to use that myself. I didn't realize she used that until I saw the movie the other day. That's our world. We are navigating these spaces that are not for us. And so it's incredibly important that we are here leading an organization like this and really focused on addressing the inequities that exist for us. And that work is important for communities as a whole, communities of color, communities and our families. I'm certainly blessed in terms of what I'm doing now and some of the roles I've had in the public sector and we were addressing some of the most vulnerable folks that rely on government services. I think all of that work is important, and the work that I'm doing now is important. That really addresses that question right now is making sure that we are focused on this because if we're not focused on it, but who?
Absolutely. You have already accomplished so much, even as you just named off the Leadership Academy. There are so many things that you have accomplished. What is next that you are looking to accomplish as a leader of this coalition?
Mm. Well, I certainly want to grow it. I think that we're still very much in our early stages, even though we're 9 years in now. We started really as a 100% volunteer organization up to just less than 2.5 years ago. So we're very much in our growth stage. So I'm all about growing this organization to as many members as possible, and then also helping the organization to grow beyond Massachusetts towards our global vision. So that's what I'm working on. I'm working on doing the things that we need to do now, put in the infrastructure, getting the funding in so that we can get staff in to help with the work and then help to further expand the organization.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. You talked about mentorship earlier with your team helping mentoring the next generation of high school girls. What would your advice be to young women of color, young Black women who may be either listening to this podcast and want to follow your footsteps or just really inspired by your journey? What would your advice be for them?
Yeah. I think the first thing is finding your passion. And when you find your passion, you'll find your purpose. And then after that, the funds will follow. Don't worry about the funds so much up front. Yes, it's is we talk about wage equity and making sure that you are fighting for what you truly deserve and should be paid, for example. But I think and being open to the possibilities is something I always say. Just don't discard anything up front just because it may not fit exactly where you think you might want to be. But being open and exploring that, I think, and listen to your elders. I mean, they got some good words of wisdom that they're willing to share and own that the fact that as a Black young lady or girl or a young woman, that it is a more challenging journey for us. Learn that, embrace it, but don't let it deter you, right? It should be more of, I'm going to do this because I know I can do it, even if society might not think so. And we have lots of examples now, right? We've got a Supreme Justice, we got a Vice President, and so these should be all inspirations for us. But finding your passion, I think, once you find that, you'll find your purpose. I think that's really important.
Thank you for that. And my last question is, what would your advice be for a young Miss Blue as she enters her life into becoming the president and CEO of this amazing collision? What would your advice be for her?
Oh, well, the first thing would be for me, I'm a non-traditional student. I think I mentioned that earlier on. I didn't go right to college from high school. I decided I wanted to work. I would say if you can, go right on to college, get that college experience. But don't give up if you don't. I'm a testament to if that's really what your goal is going to be, there's a way to get it done. It's just harder. So I'm advising you working and going to school full time. That's just a harder route to go. So I would definitely pursue your education right after high school if you can do that, even if it's part-time, and continue to learn, be a consummate student. And I would say don't let fear deter you. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Learn from the lessons, from the mistakes, and do better. And it's okay.
Well, thank you so much again, Miss Blue, for your time today. It has been such a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is really great.
Wow, such a great conversation today. Thank you so much to Celia Blue for joining us and for truly being a Black woman who saves the world. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to my podcast and never miss an episode. Also, check out our various social media channels, including our Instagram, Apple, Spotify, and YouTube accounts. Tune in to the final podcast episode of Season 1 for my interview with Nishette Black Burke, the first Black and Caribbean woman mayor of Windsor, Connecticut. I promise this is a conversation you won't want to miss.